Hi, my name is Jesse at Trash Panda, and I'm currently making a fully recycled disc. In part 4, we left off at a little bit of a roadblock with the electronics, and in part 5, I'm actually going to step away from that and take you through the process of designing a disc. So there's a few things we need to talk about. Designing a disc, horizontal and vertical planes, putter videos, the disc golfer's nightmare, SolidWorks, and Facebook. Let's do this thing. For those who are new to disc golf, there are basically 4 types of discs: putters, mid-ranges, fairway drivers, and drivers. Now, the difference between these types of discs can be boiled down to accuracy, speed, and distance. It can get way more complicated than that, but for a beginner, I'd basically say throw your putter up close, throw your mid-range a little bit further than that, your fairway driver a little bit further than that. As you progress from being a beginner to an amateur player, that's when you can also move up into higher speed drivers at further distances. Now, how the disc flies is where it gets a little bit tricky. Disc golf is easier to describe when you're comparing it to golf. In golf, clubs will only affect the ball in a vertical plane. Golf balls are meant to go perfectly straight, but based on the angle of the club, it affects how high or low it goes. The only way to affect the horizontal plane is to move your body or your hands, like slicing it. In disc golf, it's the exact opposite. Discs are affected on a horizontal plane. The only way to affect the vertical plane of a disc is to move your body or release it, say, high or low. That might not make a ton of sense because disc golf is honestly just really hard to explain without throwing a disc with you, but this diagram might be really helpful. This picture shows every single disc in my bag, and it assumes that I've thrown every disc the exact same way. If this diagram were an open field, this is where all of the discs would land. As you can tell, it's super different. Now, in an effort to not overwhelm you, there's one more thing I have to describe, and it's disc golf numbers. Almost every disc comes with 4 numbers attached to it. And those 4 numbers tell you the speed at which you need to throw the disc, the amount of glide you'll get based on throwing it at that speed, and the turn and the fade. If you're a backhand right-hand player like me, meaning you throw like this, then almost every disc is gonna fade to the left. Some of them, however, will turn a little bit before they fade to the left. With another look at that diagram, you can see what I mean by turning to the right and then fading to the left. And this is where it gets super tricky. In golf, you have 9 irons and they're basically all the same. But in disc golf, your 9 speed drivers are all gonna fly different. Suffice it to say, there are a ton of variables in disc golf. So now that you know the basics, there's a question we need to answer. The question is, what kind of disc am I going to make? And the answer, which you probably already know, is a putter. Because I'm not really well versed in disc golf aerodynamics, or really any aerodynamics for that matter, I decided it would be easiest to start with the shortest flying disc. Plus, inside of 30 feet, just about every putter is gonna fly the same, basically. If you missed it, I posted 2 videos where I tested out almost every putter on the market just to figure out what I liked and didn't like in putters. And from those videos, I was able to figure out exactly what I want in my design. Choosing a putter, as I will continue to say, is a completely subjective process. But since I'm designing the putter, I'm gonna design it to my liking. And there are 2 primary camps in disc golf putters: bead or no bead. I personally prefer the no bead feel, like an AVR or a P2 or a Luna, just to name a few. So I decided to use my AVR as the basis from which I'll design a disc. Now, just to be clear, none of the dimensions are the exact same. All discs have patents on them, and I am not trying to play with that. I am simply using the AVR to get started rather than starting from 0. I took some measurements and was able to figure out all of the unique aspects my putter is going to have. All disc measurements are available on the PDGA website, but I just wanted to measure twice for my own use. And in the middle of doing this, I ran into a problem. I couldn't figure out the thickness of the top of the disc. So I had to live the disc golfer's nightmare, and in order to figure out the measurement of the top of a disc, I decided to take a few old beat up discs that I don't use anymore to my bandsaw. And yes, a single tier was shed. At this point, I called a buddy of mine named Pete. Pete is a great dude who knows how to use SolidWorks. SolidWorks is a CAD software through which we were able to design a disc from the measurements that I'd set up. Then, taking that disc, Pete put it in between 2 blocks of aluminum and made a negative. And thus we had the mold. The mold is super simple with an injection point in the bottom and 4 holes in each corner, allowing for nuts and bolts that will help align and hold the mold together during the injection process. The moral of the story, find a friend like Pete. He's the man. Now, this was by far the easiest part of the process for me, but it also led into the hardest part of the process. I now had to find a machinist who would make the mold. Through the precious plastic community, I was able to find a guy in Greece who quoted me at $400. But with the world where it's currently at, I just didn't want to deal with international shipping and the possibility of it getting lost or delayed. I also knew long-term this was going to mean significant lead times rather than if I found someone here. So, in Denver, I found a guy who was the man, super kind, and he quoted me at $4,000. I asked him, dude, what is the deal with this? Like, why is this 1,000% more than the other quote I got? And he let me know 2 things. 1, he has state-of-the-art equipment that's brand new. And 2, there's people who have these machines that aren't quite as precise, but they're in their garages and they can do this on the side for a lot cheaper. He also said, if I'm not working in rocket science, then the precision they can afford will be just as great as what I'm looking for. So then I had to find someone who had a CNC in their garage. Now, I started looking for 2 weeks. I could not find anyone. I was getting on forums, doing all the different things. And finally, I asked for a recommendation on Facebook. One of my good buddies commented and we got on the phone and he let me know that his dad actually has a CNC in his garage and he teaches machining. He connected me with his dad, we got it all set up, and his dad is gonna make the mold for less than $500. This means that the mold that I just showed you that we designed is currently being made, and I should have a recycled disc soon-ish. I cannot tell you how much of a relief this was for me, as I'd just been getting stuck trying to find a machinist. And that leads me to the real moral of the story. This thing's all about community. At the end of the day, I wouldn't have a putter designed in CAD or someone making the mold without my community. And if you're a disc golfer, you know that the disc golf community is one of the best communities out there. So a huge thank you goes to Pete, Jonathan, and Todd, and the many, many others who have helped me in this process. So in the next part, we're gonna finish up the injection machine and all of the electronics so that by the time the mold gets here, we can make a fully recycled disc. Make sure to subscribe to support the channel, and we'll see you next time.